gentlemen, welcome to the Keith Andrew. Let me do that again. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Keith Andrew Network. I am your host, Keith Andrew, and you're watching the Keith Andrew Network. This is episode 463. And today we have a very special guest, none other than Andrew Forbes. I just want to say thank you for being a guest on my talk show.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. The honor's all mine. For people who want to know what my talk show is about, the whole point of my talk show is to show people that even with having a learning disability, I can still amount to something. And at the same time, I'm able to turn myself into an example for people out there dealing with any types of learning disabilities and disabilities to never give up and to prove people wrong. Prove to them that labels do not dictate who you are and who you're going to be. And it's approved by me to break the labels. So hashtag break the labels. That being said, half hour, 37 minutes of your time. I'm going to ask you some easy questions and some hard-hitting ones. And, I'm going to pretty much ask you, I was told to be well more aggressive with the interviews. So I'm going to ask you hard-hitting questions, and I want you to do the same. So I'm going to push you, but I want you to push back. You can ask me, say anything you want. It's a fun interview, supporting a good cause, make a new friend out of it. Hey, anything goes. So with that being said, I made a little list of everything I saw on your profile that I want to talk to you about.
Sure.
The first one I saw that caught my interest was you were a founder and you started your own company. What can you tell us about that, and who influenced you to start your own company?
Oh, wow. I guess this is a story of in startups that happens many times. You deal with a lot of lessons early on. The name of the company is called Jozu for Women. It is a travel-based startup. It started out of my apartment here in Miami, one of my former apartments, and basically I convinced a friend who was very good in marketing to join a startup we wanted to do in travel, which was an idea conceived at a destination wedding in Jamaica with a friend of mine that I mentored for many years. Wanted to do a magazine and a travel agency, but we realized that we wouldn't be first. There are many travel agencies that exist, so we have to work on something that would be better. And so we decided to add the first female-focused travel agency, and this was basically something we agreed on together because the female buyer is really the one spending the travel dollars. Whether you're married or not, your wife does that. So we incorporated things like machine learning, group buying into the startup. And we're still in the beta phase, but we've received a lot of great press. The company was written up in Forbes magazine. The company was also incubated by one of the travel GDSs, which is a global distribution system. They sell to people like Travelocity. Every site, they need to go to a wholesaler, basically. And Amadeus Ventures was a company that took us over. So I'm happy to say that, that's a company that I founded, worked on many of the financials. We did a lot of internal conflict. I was primarily the founder and chief revenue officer in the early phases. And I later exited the company, but ultimately it's still, my baby. I have a baby already, my son, but this company was one of them. So it's interesting that you spoke about it. But I even hand drew the logo for that company, Jozu for Women, and then we had a designer work on it. I put in, not just me, but with our group, but I put in a lot of the startup capital to do it, because if you're starting a company, you put your time and money. Many times people have a lot of time, but you also need money as well to get a lot of things going. So, we pooled the resources, and I took the risk, and ultimately we got funded, and now the company is growing leap and bounds. As I said, it's still in the infancy, but I believe that it will have pretty good an impact in the marketplace. And I always try to see what I can do to get the name out there, or just to have the company, I guess, get as much exposure as possible, because that's what you need. You need to make sure that people know your brand exists, because there's other big brands that are spending billions to outmarket you, which basically is to have a bigger megaphone than you do.
No, absolutely. Now, my next question I was going to ask you is, for your company, do you work with people with disabilities? And for people who have disabilities, how can they work with you?
I mean, I feel like everybody has a disability, right? So, so ultimately, uh, I guess that's a two-part answer. It's yes and no. With developmental delays, etc., I don't have anybody like that in any of the businesses I work with yet. Have I considered it yet? Yes. A friend of mine, Brad Feld, actually introduced me to a concept of companies that hire people with disabilities, and I'm open to anything that can help somebody get to their maximum potential. With this startup, we didn't have anybody with a disability that I know of. But I believe that everybody's good at something. Sometimes a disability could be a blessing. Um, People like Richard Bronson are said to be dyslexic, but yet he started over 350 companies. So it's really based on, I believe, you taking what you're good at and applying it into something that can um, serve others, which in turn will make you money. That's it.
Alright, so if someone wants to know actually my next question, what is your main focus? Like, what is your main product that you're selling to the public, and how do people get behind it? Like, how do they use it?
Sure. Well, I believe in investing in yourself. I think it was Ben Franklin that said an investment in education pays the biggest interest. So I focus on human potential. We all live in buildings, and they rot, they deteriorate, but we still have to pay all this money to maintain them, right? And there's a saying: rich people pay for a lot of things, but wealthy people have a lot of things that pay them. And I believe the single difference between a rich person who's going after status and a wealthy person is that single difference. One is focused on outflow, and the other is focusing on inflow, whether it's inflow of money, inflow of ideas, inflow of learning. So I focus on human potential. Really and truly, what I really want to do is create or inspire, or maybe help create and inspire about 1 million millionaires. And it might sound like such a lofty goal, but really and truly, it can be done. If I said 1 million billionaires, maybe that would be much harder. But people who make $100,000 of income over a 30-year period will actually have made $3 million. So to be a millionaire, you have to capture about 30% of that, right? 33. And I believe that it's hard to capture that. So you have to have human potential to make sure that what you do capture, which is probably going to be maybe 200 or 300,000 of it, you can apply things like growth in real estate and investing to get you to that $1 million goal, which is before you retire, some say. But I like to say before you get to your halfway mark, before you get to 50, because I'm not a big believer in retirement. I feel like you should do what you love, or what you love it will be a dream that has you. So this is a big lofty goal. So I can't retire until I know at least 1 million millionaires, and from that I tie. Hopefully it's the same 1 million, but if it's not, I tie another goal, which I think it's even bigger, is to help 1 million millennials become debt free, because we're the first generation that's been laden with so much debt, and it's not even debt that one would consider silly. It's actually smart debt, because you're going to college, you get a degree, and one would think that, okay, let me get a college degree, because you probably will make maybe 3 to 5 million in your lifetime, as opposed to maybe 300,000 to 1 million. Does that make sense? Because you only had a high school diploma versus a college degree. So I focus on really human potential. That's where my calling is.
All right, so what I'm getting is that your process of your company is to help people become millionaires.
I like that, but it's really about making them financially literate and focus on either achieving some form of stability in their life or whatever they perceive as success. It just so happens that 9 out of 10 of those things coincide with money. That's all. So money is a tool in that process. And as I said, I don't want it to be all money focused. It's really about impact focused, right? You have a show and you want to reach other people with disabilities. You know, maybe you want 1 million people with disabilities to see this and get active in the workforce or get active, you know, in their community in some way, or even better, just get to know each other and be a resource for each other. Because if you get everybody tied together, one person might have one disability over here and the other might have a strength over here that absolves them of that issue, right? So only by creating a community can you do that. I mentioned my friend Rodolfo, we call him David Leon. He wrote a book called Unity and Diversity. So if you get a diverse group of people with disabilities, I promise you that something good will come out of it. The group will be stronger. You know, as they say, the whole is stronger than the sum of its parts. So he's got a project called The World Without Walls that I'm helping him with. And it's a wonderful project that you will get more info on because I will send you his book so you can read it. But also I will connect you. Maybe he could be somebody you interview on your show as well.
Yeah, he's more than welcome. And I'm not really a big reader, but if you have an audio book, I would love to listen to it.
Absolutely. Well, the beauty of having a PDF is certain tools are there to actually allow you to play the audio from it. So you can always transpose that. And I'm a big reader, but I also know that there's limited time in the day. If somebody else reads the book to me, they might read faster, right? So instead of me taking 20 hours to get through a book, somebody might read it in 10 to 15. Because I tend to highlight and tend to go through too much. So instead, somebody can read the book and I can go back and highlight. So I agree with you there.
No, absolutely. Now, my next question I was going to ask you is a story about you are a social media advocate. And so what I'm going to ask you for this one is social media. Can social media make you or break you? And with that being said, what is your honest opinion about social media?
Well, social media is really just new media, right? It's using the computer as opposed to using maybe a phone, using radio, using TV. So I believe that any form of exposure you can receive today, especially if your goal is to serve others, you want to use it. Social media is just, I believe, the most connected form of media we've ever had. Because with the TV, you never speak with the broadcaster. The broadcaster is recorded, 3-4 hours ago, so it's not live. You don't have the true human potential there. It's really somebody reading a script to you or giving you a scripted message. Social media now allows you to talk in real time with your favorite basketball player or your favorite musician. I'm a huge fan of the Marley family, and I can communicate on social media with my really good friend Rowan Marley in 2 seconds. Now, why do I say that name? Well, this person, if he was a radio personality or a musician, even if you went to his concert, odds are you would not be able to speak with this person and have a dialogue. So social media allows you to reach the people you want to reach, especially if they want to reach you as well, right? So it creates a bridge. It's social capital. It's almost a currency, and you can exchange in between, as opposed to somebody just serving you up a menu. So I'm a huge advocate of that because it leads to dialogue. Some might say it's good or bad, but we live in America and we have, our freedom of speech here. I love that. This is why we live in America. freedom to speak, freedom to learn, freedom to gather. I mean, I don't want to make this political because that has nothing to do with how I look at social media, but it's been proven that it works. It gets people engaged, and that's what I really like about it.
You can say whatever you want.
There you go, freedom of speech.
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt. I do apologize. But for people, like for the subject, I give you a perfect example of that. You are a public speaker and also a book author and a mentor. We can get to those in a couple minutes. But you say you have thousands of people following you. Yet you look at someone like me who reads and learns at a 5th grade level, but yet he has a great talk show that he's been doing for 4.5 years. Do you think the message it's more important than the following, or is the following more important than the message?
This is a wonderful question, and congratulations on 4 years. This is now a situation of thinking about the cart before the horse, right? You don't have a narrative without the cart and the horse. So you need a message and you need the following. They go together. You can't separate them. Many people have a lot of followers, but they're not engaging. So you have very minimal impact. The power of it is putting them together, right? Then you have something very, very strong. So you have to know, like I said, a disability says you learn at a 5th grade level, but you communicate at a 10. So what's the difference?
Yeah.
I mean, you say you have a disability, but I don't see one. You have a show. You can communicate with the world. You just work better using your mouth for communication, maybe than information retention. So what? Ultimately, you've been able to use the tools you have to do a show for 4.5 years. Many people are even scared to do any form of public speaking. Do you know that? They fear public speaking more than death. So to put yourself in a position where you're willing to tackle a fear that's bigger than death, then who cares what level you learn at? Maybe this disability gives you a numbness to this fear that many people have. And I think fear is a bigger disability than anything, because that's what leads to regret. So if you look back at your life, I mean, I see SmackDown awards and belts behind you. Maybe you can be the SmackDown king of disability talk show. Who knows? You understand what I'm saying? You have a way to communicate. So this is your power. Leverage it. You know, that's your superpower. Maybe that disability heightened your ability to communicate or to be patient in communicating. Many people are what we call waiting to talk listeners. They're not really trying to, analyze what you say. So they jump in with their thought. You were mindful enough, even when you interrupted me, to apologize. I mean, I wasn't offended by it. Some people might, but you were mindful enough to say, "Hey, Andrew, I'm sorry, I jumped in." So, with that said, I don't see it that way. I see it as a case of the chicken and the egg once again, or the cart before the horse. They go together. The story doesn't work without one. If you just had a horse, there's no story of the cart, right? They go together. And I think you should just use your talent, right? Whatever that is, use it as much as you possibly can, because then it becomes a skill.
No, I agree with you, and there's two things I like to point out. Yes, I'm a big wrestling fan, and while on the subject, I might as well get this one out of the way first, is pretty much unofficially I did over 700, this shows my stupidity, now I do permission forms. When I first started, I did 300, and I wanted something to represent my hard work. I could have gone in, Trophy 1, Season 1, Season 2, and Season 3. And I didn't want that because I would stick it in the closet and you never see it again. So also, like you were saying, I'm a big wrestling fan. So I went out and created my own championship.
Wow.
It's imperfect because, I didn't mess it up on the front. But it's pretty much, I'm just showing you, hey, look at what a kid with a disability can accomplish. And this belt is a symbol for every single person out there who has a disability, who's learning disabled, who suffers from depression, or whatever type of excuse or label people want to throw on you. It's pretty much showing you, hey, if I can do it, you can do it too. And I'm just showing you that labels do not dictate who you are and who you're going to be, and you can break those labels. Unfortunately, no, go ahead.
No, I was gonna just add something simple to that. It's the idea of getting a ribbon pinned on you, right? You can get a star pinned on you, or you can get a frown. You choose what you're allowed to be pinned, because you're the one that's going to carry it around. So I love this. I mean, having your own championship belt. I could not read that, and I said something about it, and that's exactly what was on the belt, right? Because who's competing with you now? You know, you're the only person in your space, and even if other people come, ultimately your show is going to stand out because there's room for more in the marketplace. We have 300 million plus people in America, and with the internet we have over 7 billion, so you can reach anybody with a phone and access to the internet.
No, absolutely, and I agree with you. And of course, I did make some mistakes along the way. Unofficially, I did 772 interviews, and of course, at that time, I met a lot of great people. I met a lot of jack-offs, but because there's I'll give you an example. You would say, "Hey, Keith, we did a great interview, blah blah blah." A year later, or 2 years later, this is what pisses me off. This is before the permission forms. Yeah, could you take it down? My agent said, my publicist said, you're degrading, you ask a lot of stupid questions, we don't want to be seen with people like you, blah, blah, blah. So from 300, I said, hell with it, because at the time I was called uncensored. As a wrestling fan, I liked how Hershey's and Snickers presents WrestleMania, or Monday Night Raw, or Raw vs. SmackDown.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like, well, I'm paying for the name Keith Andrew Network. Why not have the Keith Andrew Network present uncensored? And a lot of people got turned off by the name. I got into a fight with one wrestler. He's passed away now, but he left a bitter taste in my mouth because he basically told me to go blank myself. And he didn't like the fact that it was uncensored. And I can make a long story short. And so I said, screw it. I took everything down. Now I went back to people with permission forms. And I said, can you sign permission forms? And say, I have permission. And, there's certain people, 2 people recently said, I have a bad accent. And I did ask a lot of stupid questions. Can you edit it? Or can you hide it? I said, nope, I will not take it down whatsoever. You signed the form. However, I will edit it and make it more professional. So from 40 minutes, I knocked it down to 21 minutes. And you still having a temper tantrum. Like, you can have a temper tantrum all you want. You have a little fit. You signed the form. You're going to stand by it.
Well, it's the concept of keeping your word, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you hire people, Warren Buffett said he looks for 3 things. And I love that. You look for integrity first, obviously, to make sure you keep your word, and then intelligence, right, and energy. So, but it starts with integrity. It says if you don't have the first one, then you get rid of the other 2. So if you sign the form, stick to it. I'm a firm believer in that. I mean, I don't know if you know who Malcolm Gladwell is, but he wrote a book called The Tipping Point. And if you did 700 shows, each of an hour,
yeah,
7,000 roughly, is that? Yeah, we'll do the math. You're 70,000 hours? Jesus, that's a lot of people. 7,000 hours or 700 hours. I'm a math guy and I can't do this math, right? But that's the thing. I don't need a calculator to do it. I'm going with the minutes. But if you just took the hours, he says it takes 10,000 hours to be an expert at what you do. So let's say you had 700 shows, they're all an hour. You're at 700 hours. You only have 300 more interviews to become an expert like David Letterman. Wow. So keep that in mind. Maybe all your fear will go away. See, I don't mind making a mistake. What I don't like is if I make a mistake and I don't go back and correct it.
Yeah.
Right? The devil's in the details. So if I did the math incorrectly, I will write you and say, hey, this was incorrect. Can you correct it for the audience? If I quoted somebody wrong, etc. But Malcolm Gladwell is somebody I speak of because this is the power of social media, and also the power of making sure that you focus on your intellect. So I read his book. Well, I read all of them. Tipping Point, David and versus Goliath, What the Dog Saw, Outliers. I love Outliers and the Tipping Point most. And in the book, it would have been Outliers or the Tipping Point or both. He mentioned this concept of 10,000 hours. He didn't create the concept, but he just applied it in ways we knew today. And in the end of one of his books, he started speaking about being related to Colin Powell. My grandmother is Carolyn Powell. We are related to Colin Powell. My family's from Jamaica. So when I read in his book, he said, I'm related to Colin Powell. And I said, well, your name is Gladwell. Okay, I mean, he's Canadian Jamaican. I did not know that. So I proceeded to write him an email. I read this in your book. I would have never found that in the book. It was at the end in the acknowledgments that he's talking about that. So if you never read the book, you wouldn't know that. And he gladly received me. He said, I'm so happy that you wrote me. I would gladly look at your book when you're done. You understand what I'm saying? So you realize that people who got to a certain level of success, they only got there by connecting with others, or as the saying goes, standing on the shoulders of giants. So you have to look up somebody in the talk show world that you admire. I use David Letterman because David Letterman is somebody who went through some controversy and yet he's back. I love people who can go through adversity and just rise. I was at the symphony yesterday and they talked about, or not talked about, but they played a piece called The Phoenix, right? And they used Puerto Rico in that example of how Puerto Rico was beautiful. I mean, I've been there 6 times or close to 6 times on many trips. And they talked about how the paradise was basically ruined, but yet everybody still got high spirits. And the music was used to channel that, as well as some advocacy, all in that same time period. You know, so I mean, when you look at just the power of taking the first step, it's social media is there, but unless you reach out to people and have the right kind of message, they're not going to receive you in an audience. So I wrote something to Gladwell, which maybe he planted there, I don't know, as to see who would notice. And I noticed, and I wrote him, and he said, you know, he'd be willing to look at it. So you have to pick somebody that you like. I won't know who that is. If you want to know who that is popular and you have a personality like them, yes, it's called 16personalities.com. You should have any disabled people you have come on here to look at it. Maybe disabled veterans or people born with disabilities, and see who are you most like. Now, when I took the test, it said I'm most like Will Smith. Aha, that's ironic because I watched the movie Pursuit of Happiness and I saw how he was with his son Jaden, right? And you could not make it up. It was not acting because it's his own son. It's very easy for him to think of a time when Jaden maybe hurt himself and he cried. Fast forward, that movie came out in around 2007 when I just got into the financial services industry, and I was like, I want to be like Chris Gardner. But really and truly, I didn't want to be like Chris Gardner. I wanted to be like Will Smith. I took this test and they say we have the same personality. Everything he's done, I've loved it. Movies, etc. But also Will Smith is a motivational speaker. He's an advocate for people trying to live their best life. That was interesting. And I watched Iron Man. I loved Iron Man. Guess what? Robert Downey Jr. He had adversity in his life. He went to jail. Now he's Iron Man. You know, so when you look at these things, going through adversity can either make you or break you. And people always talk about your intelligence quotient. That's what you're talking about, IQ. Well, you read at the 5th grade level. I really don't care about that. I care more about your EQ, which is your emotional quotient, right? You interrupted me, you felt like it would affect me, and you said, hey, Andrew, I apologize. This is amazing. I want people with that kind of emotional or empathy. I want people with that kind of empathy around. And then you have the second one, which is your adversity quotient. How much can you go through, right, before you get broken, right? Because success is really about going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. They always say the successful guy is just a failure that tried once more time. And this is the same sentiments echoed by all of these people who've made it. Richard Branson, the former president of Goldman Sachs, I think his name is Gary Cohn. He is dyslexic, right? The guy who even started Patron Tequila, they said he had some form of disability, or people told him he was no good when he was young. And they put it as a chip on their shoulder and said, I'm going to prove it to you, because sometimes, I guess, having a point to prove, right? When somebody, let's say, punches you in the face or hurts you, a point to prove becomes what motivates you. It's like my friend Rodolfo Leon David says to me. He says, pain is a motor. And it's true. Pain is the best way for you to remember. You look at your body, the scars are there. Those are what teach you, right? You don't remember most of the good things that happen to you. I promise you. I mean, unless they're major moments, like meeting the CEO you always wanted to meet, or a celebrity. But the biggest impact, I believe, on your life is through the adversity. So I focus more on emotional quotient, adversity quotient, and then the intelligence quotient. Those two things, because you can teach someone to become more intelligent, right? Over time, you'll become more intelligent just by feeding your brain the right kind of food, or learning the best way you learn. There you go, because you want the audio as opposed to reading.
No, I agree with you. Now, it's the last 4 minutes. I'm going to pass it over to you. Was there anything you're working on that you want to promote? Was there anything you want to talk about? Ask me. This is your time wrapping up.
Well, to me, I'm focusing on getting some concepts in the hands of people to help them create wealth and preserve wealth. It's very important to know both. The creation side is just as important as the innovation side. So one is for creation, one is for preservation. They go together. Like I said, or like you said before, is it about, having the followers first and the influence or the influential message? They go together. This is, most times people deal with one side and not the other. That's the issue. Or they're not balanced. One's off, so it looks like this. So it's like, give me a timeout. Something's wrong. Let's fix it. And the concepts I want to get out to people are really around them being more financially literate, being more aware, right? As well as taking the leap from employee to somebody who could become an employer. Maybe an employer of people with disabilities. There must be something that people with disabilities can do better than others, right? And it doesn't have to be relegated to something in the background. It could be something that could be in the forefront, right? If I just watched the movie 300 recently, so I will use this example because it's unbelievable. The guys in 300 were betrayed by a person who was born of Sparta, and he had a disability. What was his disability? He couldn't raise his shield, and that is the Spartan way. But instead of Leonidas, the king of Sparta, saying to this guy, well, you have a wonderful brain, you can scavenge the land. How do we protect ourselves against the weakness that you found, right? Which was the path into the I think they call it the hot gates. But instead he said to the guy and bruised his ego, I want you to tend to the guy's wounds on the battlefield and bring them water. So he wanted him to become a water boy, like that movie. No, if this guy is smart enough to see what you could not see, put him in your council, right? That's what the guy was there for. And now after you bruise his ego, he worked his whole life for this moment and you shattered his dreams. So he went to your adversary and was given everything he needed, and Leonidas lost that battle. Maybe they ultimately won the war, but Leonidas was not there to see it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, my last two questions for you. Actually, a bonus question. Here's the bonus one for you. Did you make that baseball pitcher behind you?
No, this painting was done by my dear friend Helene Weiss. I've been working with her on a couple projects to get her more visibility. So I'm glad that you see this. So this is done by Helene. This is one of the most beautiful paintings I've ever seen in my life. I call her the female Picasso. She is archived in the Smithsonian. She's accredited and archived there. Smithsonian Archives for Women. She was in the Brooklyn Museum. Wonderful work. One of the best people I know. So when you ask me about who I want to promote, I want to promote you. I want to promote Helene. I want to tell other people's stories because mine is self-explanatory. You found me, right? So there must be something I'm doing on social media that creates followers and influence. So that formula is correct. I don't need to be now one of those confident men, or we call them the con men, that just go out and just promote themselves. That's not the power of people. We only work when we serve each other. And anybody can be great because anybody can serve. I believe that was Martin Luther King that said that. You know, so I mean, speaking of Martin Luther King, we just had Black History Month, right? But what came right after? Now we're into Women's Month. That shows you the power of this world, men and women together. Black History Month is not about a particular man, but who do we talk about the most on Black History Month? Dr. Martin Luther King. So now we have Martin Luther King. Now we have on the women's side, we can speak about Oprah. Apparently she's making waves. She might run for office. Why not? Whether she wins or not, she's going to inspire little girls. That's what we want. And Oprah's show is known to appeal to everybody. So Oprah is the type of person you want to run. You want somebody that's very powerful in their reach, a diverse reach of people.
Yeah, I agree. Now, with that being said, our timer is up. And with that being said, I do have a couple questions for you off the air, but wrapping up, how can people follow you on social media? Are you on Twitter, LinkedIn, Stage 32? And when I first approached you to be a guest on my talk show, what was your first reaction and what made you say yes?
You overcame fear. As I said to you, this is the key. Most people are scared to reach out to others. The moment that somebody reaches out to me, I know I have to help them. It's my obligation. I'm here to serve. That's what I'm here. I wear a bow tie on purpose. I don't wear a necktie as an executive that's there to sell you something. I wear a bow tie because it says service. I'm here to serve. There's a story I heard of in a company called Neiman Marcus, I believe, or it could have been Bloomingdale's. Every executive in that company, do you know where they start? In the shoe department.
Yep.
Now, how do you put on somebody's shoes? On your knees. So it lets you know the importance of who you're serving, your customer, your clients, your friends, your family. I would accept this invitation 10 times over because you were brave enough to go out and do it. Yoda, do or do not. There is no try. You can't try anything in this life. Either you did it or you didn't. That's it. Once you succeed at it, you did it. And what was the first question? I wanted to answer that one.
Oh, social media.
Well, yes, I'm all over social media. I mean, I go with my full name because it turns out nobody else has that name. I've met a good friend, well, he became a good friend, but I met him through another friend. His name is Andrew Damian, spelled differently, Castillo. I'm Andrew Damian Forbes. I haven't found it. I found another Andrew Forbes, but Andrew Damian Forbes. I'm the only one on social media. So you can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I personally gravitate to LinkedIn because it's all about influence, right? And then now you have Instagram for the followers. So I focus on those two primarily. And I'm most popular on Instagram because it's visual. And I try to use that visual to tell a story. So if you look me up, I even had a website, for example, AndrewDamianForbes.com. I took it down because ultimately Instagram, Facebook, all of these platforms are there for you to go where there's already people. Why do I need to drive the ants out of a big mantle of a molehill or I mean, it's not even a molehill. I guess I would be building a molehill, but Facebook is a mountain. It's the biggest anthill in the world. So go where the people are. And guess who owns Instagram over here? Facebook. So they're linked. LinkedIn is owned by who? Microsoft. All these people have, or these companies, these collections of people have billions to spend, combined trillions to spend to get your eyes. Why would I compete there? No, just go to that place where people are, but make sure you are different than everybody else. Everybody wears a bow tie or they put on their jumpsuit. You know, Mark Zuckerberg was said to be willing to wear flip-flops and a hoodie everywhere. Well, guess what? That has changed quickly. Mark Zuckerberg, since his pledge, now wears a suit to give an address at Harvard, right? So you have to be different. If people are looking to you, if they're learning from you, you have to be different. I used this story today with my really close friend Helene about cigarettes, because she was a former smoker that quit. And I said, if you bought a pack of cigarettes and inside the pack there was one cigarette that turned upside down, right? You probably would not want to smoke that one. But you want to be that cigarette that turns upside down so that people can see you stand out from the crowd.
No, absolutely. Now, wrapping up our talk show segment, I do have a couple questions for you off the air. But it was a real honor and privilege to have you as a guest, and I'm looking forward to part 2 down the road.
Absolutely. I would gladly be on whenever you need me. As I said, you reached out to me, and this only took us half an hour and probably an hour of time to arrange. So I always have some time to give back, and I think you should keep doing what you're doing. If your show can be some form of a 501c3, which is a not-for-profit organization, it's still an organization, but the idea is to get funding behind it so more people can know about what you're doing. Actionable solutions for people with disabilities. I believe you can get your local congressman or your senator. I mean, you are in Chuck Schumer's state, right? Chuck Schumer spoke at my graduation at University at Albany. So I'm sure they would be behind this, or Governor Cuomo. New York is very big on that. We have a very diverse state, and we want people to know what's available. I don't live in New York anymore. I'm in Florida now, but that's where I basically grew up into adulthood. So I have basically an obligation to give back there. And there are millions of people in New York. So hopefully that's the state, or between New York and Florida, right? I can help create or inspire those millionaires, or get rid of their debt.
Very. Arlene Schofield.
My name is Shireen Snow.
My name is Carla A. Miles.
Diana Camuto.
This is Christine Dunford.
I'm Eden.
Caroline Macy. This is Walker Fannin.
Maria Camille Dixon.
I'm Dates Fordham.
My name is Linda Preston, and you're watching the Keith Andrew Network.
It's Russo.
Me, Mark Medley.
Hi everybody, this is Mark Neely.
Barry Babick.
This is Peter Bruno.
My name is Kyle Collier.
This is Julio Santiago, better known as Dynamite.
I'm Richard Epcar.
Lawrence Chow.
This is Kerrigan Mahan.
This is Goldar.
And we both support
Keith Andrew.
My name is Ron Wasserman, and I am supporting Keith Andrew and what he is doing, and you better do the same, or I'm gonna come kick your ass.